The Organic Tank here with another episode, Mind of Masters. Today it's the mind of Gray Maynard, the bully, former UFC #1 contender, longtime UFC fighter, Michigan State University grad, 3-time All-American wrestler, Ohio State wrestling champion at State Edwards, one of the preeminent programs in high school wrestling for many decades now. Gray Maynard, thanks so much for having us here at his house, which is just like Forrest Griffin's house. Kiddie, everything is kiddie. You got trampolines, you got the works here.
Yeah, a lot of stub toes on toys, a lot of sitting down on, squeaky toys and popping back up. So yeah, we got a lot of traps around here.
And Gray is actually about an hour or so away from attending. Forrest Griffin's daughter, Ella, has her fourth birthday, so you're going to be there with your daughters.
I got Stella, he has Ella, and I actually go to the same school together. It's a Jewish school, and they're doing a great job. They're buddies.
Now let's talk a little bit about kids, since we're sort of into kids. There's a lot of pink, there's a lot of everything. First of all, you have 2 girls, right?
One girl.
One girl.
Yeah.
Okay, so Robert Drysdale, 2 girls. Forrest Griffin, girl. Gray Maynard, girl. Dan Gable, 4 girls. There is, as we were discussing earlier, supposedly, allegedly, in the fighter mythology, you're a high-level fighter, wrestler, etc. You're more likely to have girls. You've heard that.
Yeah.
What have you heard about that?
Well, I've heard it both ways. You have too much testosterone, or you don't have enough because you're training all the time, and I mean, I'm not a scientist, I guess.
Yep.
I don't really know. I think it's just a way of God telling us, like, hey, there's more to life than just teaching people how to fight, which we probably do to our son. Like, hey, you got to defend yourself, or it's just like, hey, here's a girl, it's gonna soften you up. So, yeah.
Now interesting. You and your wife, when you had your daughter Estella. On New Year's Eve, I believe it was last year.
2012.
2012 New Year's Eve. You guys didn't want to know the gender. You got basically surprised at birth. You didn't
Right.
get any images of, oh, it's a boy, it's a girl. 4 or 5 months in, you waited until actual birth.
Yeah.
To find that out. What was behind that?
Well, we were doing a home birth, and we just wanted it to be really. Even if you have a lot of kids, how many times does that happen in your life? Like, even if people that have 5 kids, I mean, that's like that's Christmas times a billion. You're just waiting for 9 months to know, like, what this baby's gonna be, who it's gonna be, and for us, we didn't really want to get caught up in we're gonna have a blue room or pink room or whatever it was. We just wanted to, like, really put our energy into having a healthy baby, whether it was a boy or a girl. And so we just kind of dialed in our Jessica's eating, the nutrition. We kept really active and just try to learn as much as we could just to have a healthy baby, because a lot of people are kind of unfortunate to have babies that go through these crazy issues,
mm-hmm.
and it was just pretty much like, whether it's a boy or a girl, I just want to have a healthy, happy baby.
So at the moment of birth, you had 2 names at the ready then?
No, we didn't have any names. We didn't. Yeah, it was like we kind of wanted to meet the baby and then kind of name it. So
how long did it take to get to arrive at that name then?
It came to like the last, like, they were like, no, you have to give this baby a name. We're like, all right, because Jess had
like day 5 or
yeah, we had this crazy pregnancy or we had this crazy birth. It was at home. It was a home birth, and Jess was pushing for, like, it was a 20-hour
labor.
Yeah, at home,
mm-hmm.
and then she was pushing, and the heart rate dropped, and we had to call the ambulance. We had to go in, and she kept going there.
She wound up going into the hospital.
Yes, going into the hospital. Kept pushing, and then what happened was the umbilical cord was wrapped around her foot, and so.
And that's a big deal. For men who don't know that, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, it just doesn't come out.
Yeah.
And every time you push, it squeezes it, and that was the heart rate dropping, and.
So it was kind of nerve-wracking though from your end.
Yeah, because we didn't know that happened until they cut her open and did a C-section, and then I was the first person in the history of the hospital to like hold my baby like right when it came out. So it was cool.
That was an allowance. They made that allowance to you because they knew that you had wanted a home birth.
Yeah.
So they wanted you to still be able to experience.
Yeah,
that.
skin to skin, and just
create that instant bond.
Yeah. I was like in the kind of the emergency room. I ripped off my stuff. They're like, this guy's a meathead. Taking off his shirt.
So you want to, again, you don't see, Gray doesn't necessarily seem, you got the nickname the Bully, doesn't necessarily seem like this, this highly educated, thoughtful, you really are you're the kind of guy, you go out into nature, you cycle, you think deeply about things, and maybe people don't always have that impression of you, or a fighter for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you got, like our sport, you got boxing where like even if I wanted to do boxing growing up, I never really had an opportunity because back a long time ago it was mainly boxing gyms were just in low income areas, like really low income. And, I mean, I didn't have a lot of cash, but we never were in areas to where like I could go to boxing. It was always wrestling. And what you do in that sport is you grow up and you compete, and the whole goal is to try to get your school paid for. And so a lot of guys who are in MMA went through that and went through college, and they're a little bit more educated about the money part, and it's really educated sport. I feel like Forrest, he has a college degree. Chuck Liddell did. He went to Cal Poly. I mean, all these top guys are, they went to college.
What did you get your degree in, by the way, Gray?
Parks and Recreation.
Okay, Parks and Recreation. Michigan State guy here, by the way. So how close are you? I mean, like when Michigan State, they've had very good football teams. Tom Izzo's. They've had national champion basketball teams. How close do you feel to that program in terms of, do you follow them religiously? Do you wear a lot of Michigan State gear? What's your relationship with the program?
I'm kind of a in the moment guy. When I was there, it was great, and obviously I keep up with my school, my alma maters and St. Ed's, but I don't really watch a lot of sports. We don't have cable. We do have the Apple TV, but I don't really keep up with a lot of stuff except for my daughter and my career and what's next.
Now your dad, Jan, was I believe two-time state champion in Ohio, which is that's the creme de la creme of state titles. You win an Ohio State wrestling title, you pretty much got the look of somebody who's going to be an All-American wrestler, maybe a national champion. You followed in it. Did you feel pressure? You won a state championship. I think you were runner-up your junior year in high school. Yeah. Did you feel any pressure to follow in Dad's footsteps at a great program too? St. Edward's is still going. That train's still rolling, producing top wrestlers.
Yeah. Well, it all kind of starts with I competed in Ohio when I was 3 years old, and that's kind of how I got going, and then we moved a couple different places, and we ended up out here when I was 10 years old in Vegas. But I always wrestled. I always wanted to be good at that. I think my dad, he never pushed me to do it, but he taught me about the sport to make me really love it and want it, and to be a fan of the Brands brothers and all the old school. I knew all the old school names. And
roommates with Rashad Evans, by the way.
Yeah.
Roommates. college roommate with Rashad Evans.
Yeah. And so I grow up here, and I do pretty good. I mean, this state isn't an Ohio or a Pennsylvania. It's actually getting better now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of good kids, but there was still a lot of room to grow. But and I knew that. And in my 9th grade here, I didn't place at state, and then 10th grade I won state, and I kind of had a deal that if I won state here, I could go to a school. I could go out of state to a school, and one of the schools we were choosing was Calvary Chapel in California,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a great school, and it was one of the top schools in the nation at that year, and then also St. Edwards,
Mm-hmm.
and then also Blair Academy. It was just more about what would be the easiest, and but St. Edwards was always, I kind of grew up there, and that school was unbelievable. Like at that time, I think we even went to a dual meet, like when I was 4 years old or whatever, and he won 2 state champs there, and everybody knew him, and I wanted to go there and get 2 state champs, and I get there, I pack up all my stuff, and I lived with a couple people. I got aunts and uncles.
You didn't live with your dad wasn't there when your dad stayed behind in Vegas.
Yeah.
Was Dad at your state when you won that state title though? Dad got to come in.
No, Dad didn't come in. Dad didn't get to come in.
How did you find out? How did you win it? And then back then there's not the internet.
No, actually they were there. They weren't there my junior year. I lost.
Okay.
And then they were there my senior year. I won it, and
did he cry? Did your dad cry?
I wasn't in the stands. I was on the mat.
Yeah.
So he might have had a couple tears, but
yeah.
It was really good to go back to where we came from, and to get the state championship and to be on a national championship team. And then a couple weeks later, I went to Pittsburgh. I won the high school. I won that nationals out there, and then it was a great career.
What was your signature wrestling move in college?
It was just beating on the head. It was kind of that brute Tom Brands, like.
What's the key without I got a titanium plate in my neck, so without that, what's the key? Because honestly, I kid you not. So Gray Maynard and I had the privilege to train with Gray for a good while back in the early Robert Drysdale gym days, and I kid you not. There was a time I remember where they would put me in. Robert would put me in groups with Gray Maynard and Tyson Griffin. I don't know why he thought I was your guy's size, right? So this Gray's like 180, Tyson's like 188, 5 foot whatever, and 180 some pounds. And I had to do 3-man wrestling with these guys. And I remember one time, literally, when you snapped me, and it was everything I had to catch my face, my nose from eating the mat. Literally everything I had to catch. So what's the key of being heavy? Where are you? You're not back in the neck. Yeah. You're somewhere else, right? What's the key to being heavy on the head? Because a lot of people mess that up. Not a lot of guys are good at that.
Well, you got to go through a lot of workout partners and make a lot of people quit. If they're quitting, you're doing it right. There's no real technique. You got to get your own. Because
they don't make friends during practice.
Yeah, you don't make friends during practice, and that's part of where I got the bully. And so it's just really coming in your own. Like I watched a lot of the Tom and Terry Brands. They were heavy on the head, Iowa style, and I had a coach, John Heffernan. He was a couple-time All-American at Iowa, and he coached at St. Ed's, and he kind of got me into that Iowa style, and I did that, all the way through, and it was just being heavy on the head to where a lot of other stuff opens up, whether it's a double leg, single leg, whatever will score points.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Now, coming from St. Ed's, where you won the state title, and then you were a 3-time All-American at Michigan State. But
Yeah.
were you happy with your career? You were looking
Yeah.
for a national championship.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you got on the podium.
Yeah.
You All-American 3 years, but you were eyeing a national championship. How do you feel about, when you look back on your collegiate wrestling career? What disappoints you? What makes you think, well, if I had done that, did differently?
I mean, of course, probably a lot of good kids. I was a blue chipper coming out of high school, and I had a lot of offers from schools. I wanted to go to Iowa because I wanted to compete for the brands and kind of go through all the stuff that Iowa did,
right.
Training and I ended up going to state.
What happened there with Iowa?
They couldn't offer me enough,
Okay.
and I had parents that they didn't make a lot of money,
Yeah.
and they bent over backwards to get me back to a school to get me into college with a hope to get school paid for.
Yeah.
And
So you got a full ride to Michigan State, though.
Yeah,
Yeah, you did.
full ride, and there was a couple other schools, Arizona State, and but like going into it, as a blue chipper, you're concentrating on the highest of the high, 4-timer. Like
Mm-hmm.
I want to win an NCAA championship every year, and I went to a great school. I wouldn't change it ever. Me and the coach didn't see eye to eye, like on a lot of stuff, and if I had to do it all over again, I would have been a lot more organized about how I train and how I approach competition, and I would have known that hey, if I don't win 4 NCAA championships, 3 NCAA championships, or even a NCAA championship, it doesn't really affect him.
Mm-hmm.
It affects me. So I would have took it into my hands more, just my training, if I wanted to take a day off, or
Right.
if I wanted to not compete in a dual meet, I would have been a little bit more persistent about how I was feeling and how hard I had to train, and just how intense, and it's just because ultimately when you compete in a sport, to where it's like a man-on-man, it's just ultimately it's up to you if you're going to get the win or not, and you can have great people to help you out. You can be with horrible people, but you're going out there and you're taking the win and you're taking the loss, especially a loss.
You're not into, like, let's use an exaggeration, like Rocky 1 with Rocky with Mick, where Mick is just like the Jedi, and Mick knows everything, and then Rocky just absorbs it and just should do it. And you say, hey, there needs to be some feedback and some discretion by the athlete themselves, and say, okay, well, wait, this is what I'm feeling like I need. I feel like I should be drilling this more. I feel like this is more my style, maybe.
Yeah. Rocky is a movie, and obviously it's hard to put like a competition in a movie, a real competition, They Hollywood edited it up, but there are people who click, coach and athlete, and if it does happen, you got to know that, and you got to trust. But there's a lot of times where we get these unbelievable athletes, these people that can go so far, but they get caught up in like wrong training, wrong coaching, and it's just it isn't good. Ultimately, as an athlete, you got to know your body as quick as you can. You got to learn it, and high school is like a good time to do that. By the time you get into college, you should know your body and how you train and your strengths, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and you know, it's just ultimately about, you know, knowing what you need to do to become a champion, you know, and if you have a great coach, awesome, and if it's a great coach, he'll probably work with you anyway, like ask you, hey, how you doing today? Well, you know,
right.
How hard you want to train, you know, because ultimately I can push a kid, I can push a guy. Once you hit that past 18 point, you know, you got to be smart about training. You got to be a little bit in tune with who you are, and coaches kind of have to ask you, like, hey, I was kind of playing on a hard one. How you doing? Where you at? And you know, if he's just like, I'm all right, then maybe you pull back a little bit. But or, you know, a guy that's in tune with how he trains and how he feels can be honest, like, hey man, I'm not feeling good at all, you know, I'm gonna pull back today. Okay, cool.
You were roommates with Rashad Evans,
Yeah.
I believe, at Michigan State. What you guys were still really good friends, or
Really good friends, yeah.
yeah? What was it like being? What did you see a younger Rashad? What was that like?
Well, the story I always tell about him is he came from a junior college, and I remember he came into the room, just got to school, and you know, anytime you get freshmen or new guys in there, you know, it's kind of like new meat, and you want to check what they're made of, and you want to put them through their paces, and kind of enjoy doing that. It's
An induction.
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, haha, new meat, beginning of the year. You know, I get to.
Are you saying here live on Mind of Master you got the better of Rashad that day on day
No,
one?
no. This is what I'm saying. It's a great story. He came in and he was out of shape, and I think it was Corey Posey. Anyways, there was a lot of guys that went. He was a little bit bigger, but there was a lot of guys that just went after him, and I remember him just being so tired, and these guys just beating him, like doing what they want, and he would just be so gassed out, walking back to the middle, and they take him down again, and just again, and he just kept taking it, kept coming back for more, I'm like, you know, he's not a freshman, he doesn't really have to do this. Like, if it was me, I'd be like, hey guys, I'm not gonna get injured, like, I'll, you know, whatever. Or me, I probably would have been in shape coming into school, because I know people would have tried to test me, but he wasn't. Anyways, he kept answering the scratch and just going back to the middle, and taking his ass whooping, but I saw him systematically get everybody back throughout the year. So it was really intriguing, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I like him. You know, is that he kept it in his head, and he plugged away, and he got back in shape, and I saw him kind of, you know, take a checklist of all the guys in his head, and he got them all back, you know, throughout the year. You know, and he probably doesn't even know that
We're paying attention.
we're paying attention, but I love that type of stuff. Like, that's what sports are about, you know, is like, all right, you got me, now it's time, and you slowly work your way back and get that.
So, your relationship with the gi, because you've trained jiu-jitsu for many years, probably over a decade now.
Right.
But yet, the last I read, you're listed as a blue belt under Andre Pedneros.
Yeah.
How often do you train in the gi? How comfortable do you feel in the gi? Do you want to eventually get would a black belt mean anything to you, training in the gi?
Yeah, I mean, I actually went down to Rio to help out Jose Aldo.
Yep.
And, I just went, I bought a gi, I bought a white belt because I'm not going to buy anything else. I'm not, and I went down there, put on the belt, put on the gi because I never really trained it. And I'm hanging with black belts. I'm just going and I guess people are kind of like mad because I have this white belt on and I'm good, good to a point. I'm not like great, but I'm good. I'm kind of tapping out black belts and people are kind of getting mad, and so today he had to upgrade me to a blue belt because it was like disrespectful for me to have that belt on
and do well, dude.
And do well. Like people I had no idea, but people take that pretty hard. Like he's a white belt, he's doing good against me, and I'm a black or a brown. So after that I got into gi a little bit, and then life happened. Just for like I bought a house, I completely gutted it, remodeled it, and I didn't really have time to do gi, and that was in California, and then but I want to start getting back into gi. I want to Drysdale's is an unbelievable gym to do that. I like gi and I'm pretty good at it because I do have a good grip, and it's a little bit slower pace, which is kind of the game I have is position and so I would like to get back into it.
So you do envision someday getting your black belt? You think one day we will see?
That's
we'll see on Twitter or something. Gray Maynard received his black belt.
Yeah, that would be
probably
great.
Gonna happen.
That would be great. I'd like it.
So you had a very good career. You had that, I guess from a fan's perspective, outstanding trilogy with Frankie Edgar. Maybe not your perspective, but just a great trilogy, seared in our minds. Fight of the Year with Frankie. I think it was 2011. But at the same time, it seemed, just from my vantage point, just as an outsider, it seemed like there was a lot of turmoil because there was a lot of up and down. You're this close to being UFC, literally that close. And just right there, it's like that. It reminded me of that song, a song lyric, so close but so far away. You're right there. Everything you've ever wanted, everything you've worked for, every sprint, everything. Right there, that title was right there, and then yanked. And so you went through a period there, 2011, 12, 13, whatever, where it seemed like there was there internal, what were you going through internally when you're losing, you miss out on that UFC title by that, then in the rematch you're winning, then he comes back, and then, and it seems like it's a downhill slide for a guy that was just an outstanding fighter. You were going through guys, and then you have that little, the tide turns against you. Where were you internally? What did you do to try to get your mind right, to try to get your mojo back, I guess?
Well, I'm a gambler as far as like life is concerned. I don't actually gamble at all, but I gamble. Like here I take state in the 10th grade, and I go through people. And a lot of people would be like, "Hey, I'm going to take it 2 more times here." And
easy road. It would look pretty good for you. Stay in Nevada, win 2 more.
I got all the stuff here I need. I'd be at my parents' house instead. I want to test myself and pretty much live out of the back of my car for 11th and 12th grade year and go to an all-boys school, go to the snow, the cold weather, and just test myself. And ultimately, after that draw with Edgar, like I had another camp, then he pulled out, he had an injury, I had an injury, and then pretty much after that camp, it just kind of, I brought in a lot of people to help me learn more about training. And
some more scientific approach.
And there was a lot of turmoil in the team, and just Couture's was going through a big time, so literally 6 weeks before my fight with him, I left
before
the gym.
Before the rematch with Frank.
Yeah.
After the draw.
Yep, after the draw. So about 6 weeks before, and I just trained at like this little gym right down the street.
Now, did that? I mean, let's armchair, easy to armchair quarterback in hindsight, but let's do that for a second.
Yeah.
The decision, which is a huge decision, you're 6 months out of the biggest fight of your life.
6 weeks.
I'm sorry, 6 weeks. I'm sorry, 6 weeks out from that rematch with Frank Yeager, fight of your life.
Yeah.
Now you're in your mind, I'm going to go get the title, but now your camp is uprooted. You decide to leave there, and you're not even. According to you, you're not even training now. You're not going to like a mega camp, the greatest camp.
Yeah.
At the time, were you like, this is not a good thing to do? I should just stay there and grunt it out at extremes and just weather the storm and stay there. At the time, were you thinking, or are you just like, no?
Well, I'm a very prideful person, and I knew I was going to leave after. I knew I was going to leave because I was kind of tired of a couple of coaches there, and I knew I was going to leave. So I didn't want to get through the fight and then leave. Whether I won the belt or whether I lost the belt, I didn't want them to feel as if like, oh, he won the belt and now he's just going to leave, or he lost, it's our fault. So I just did it on my own. I took off, and obviously it's a pretty prideful move and probably pretty dumb career-wise, but that's just how I am. I don't want to be a guy that just kind of takes off, that uses people, that just like, I'm going to use the gym until I'm done. So I took off, and I got a little gym up here and brought in whoever I could to spar a little bit. Had a pretty bad back injury, and
did that so having that less than ideal camp, which you had that last 6 weeks, less than ideal. Mentally though, what did you still feel? Hey, I'm the bully. I haven't lost. You still felt like I'm going to get it done. It doesn't matter. Nothing's going to stop me.
Mentally, I felt great. Physically, I kind of faded in the fourth just because I didn't really have my sparring. I had this back injury. I had to get I had to get an epidural on my back. I couldn't walk for a week, and so it was a less than ideal camp for sure. But mentally, that's probably one of the most prepared I felt, because I wasn't broke down. I was almost like too much,
fresh. You were really fresh.
Yeah, it's like that.
Mentally
that
fresh.
happy.
You didn't run yourself down in the gym.
I didn't run myself, and I felt really good first 2-3 rounds, and it's just the cardio caught up to me. I got caught slipping, and he caught me, but and ultimately I was gonna take off, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. Was my whole career was pretty much at Couture's, and I wanted to just check out stuff, just fly around and go down to Brazil and try that out, go up to AKA, try that out, and I was just like on a quest for just knowledge. I kind of got to that point where I did this stuff over and over and over again, and I never felt, even though I won, I never felt as if I was competing to where I needed to be. I would win, I would squeak it out, whatever, but it's not the person I was in the room, and it's not the person who I could be, like in the cage.
You weren't enough of a bully on Fight Night.
Yeah. I just wasn't living up to my expectations. My expectations, and so I got this coach for the draw who he was the NFL, the strength and conditioning coach for the Jaguars at the time. He's at the Denver Broncos now, and I got with him in college when he was at Athletes Performance, and anyways, he kind of helped me change up my camp and pull back a little bit more, and you
felt like you were. I remember when you were training, you felt like overtrained. I remember you went to 4 days a week.
Oh, I remember when
just
I
to get more rest. Florian, yeah.
Yeah, Florian. You know, I was barely making it through the weeks. I was having back spasms, and I was just completely dead in like depression mode, because I would just do whatever anybody would tell me, like, all right, let's do more sparring, let's do this, let's do that. You know, oh, you kind of died in the third, you know, we got to do more sparring to make up, instead of like, hey, maybe your body's just not there, you know. And so wrestling, that's kind of was our mind frame, was always more, do more, and that's just everybody's, because it works to a point.
Right. It works when you're young too.
Yeah,
like,
it works when you're young.
Just make tough fighters. We're gonna run sprints. We're gonna run hills. We're gonna do sandbags.
Yeah.
And bodies recover.
And you see people get better doing that, and then it's like, okay, you know, what got you there isn't what's gonna take you there. You know,
to keep you there. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, obviously you can do that early in your career or whatever it is. So, and that all goes back to knowing your body, knowing how you need to train, but ultimately,
it sounds like that's maybe the best advice you give to a lot of young fighters. That theme keeps propping up, which is that you have to learn to do things more scientifically and intelligently, and not just be in the room with the dictator coach who's just saying this today. You have to have a say, I guess, in
well, I mean, if that's who you are, but if you're a hominic, you know, he's got to run, he's got to spar, and he still does good off that. Right. You know, he does more than everybody else, but he still can do that. Like, you know, the Diaz's are like the kind of guys that probably go in there and spar 6 rounds, 7 every day, and do triathlons, and there's a lot of bodies that would get broke down doing that. Yeah. You know, the Diaz's could probably be a little bit more strong, whereas other guys like me could be kind of less strong. And you know, it's just there's no perfect equation to it's kind of like everybody's a quarterback, you know, and you know, you got to have a quarterback coach to kind of blend with this quarterback to you know, it's not a team sport. You know, this is just a quarterback. Everybody has to have a coach that kind of blends good, and you got to know how you need to train and kind of how you need to do it, you know.
Now, as far as release, because you had those hard, were those years hard on you mentally, 2011, 12, 13? Were those soul-searching years? I mean, were you doing a lot of soul-searching?
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to get information. I was just trying to give my family, you know, I just had a baby, and we moved up to Santa Cruz, which that was a place where we ultimately wanted to have the kid grow up, you know, close to a beach. So I bought a house. I completely gutted it, you know, and I'm doing all this on my own, you know. Like,
is that a release for you? Is building?
It wasn't a release. It was just what I needed to do to feel comfortable to help my family, you know. But ultimately, if I could have gone back, I would have just, you know, hindsight's always 20/20, and you want to have a house for your kid, and you know, I bought this complete fixer-upper and completely gutted it and remodeled it, and all the meanwhile I'm trying to train for Diaz. I'm trying to train for who did I fight after Diaz? Ross Pearson or whoever, and then ultimately it was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, let's move back home. Let's get to where
home being Las Vegas.
Yeah, where we can drop our kid off at the grandparents' house, because we had nobody. It was just us up there, you know. And I'm doing all this housework, and my baby had to go. My girl and my baby had to go kind of back east to stay because we had no home for a little bit, and yeah, it was just one of those times that, like, it's a gut check. Like, are you a man, or, you know, are you gonna get through this, or are you just gonna quit, you know? And I mean, obviously, I didn't quit the sport. You know, I would go in to compete because mentally you feel like you can get through whatever it is, and and still do good, but ultimately, you know, you're a pro athlete, and that's not the way it is these days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to be dedicated, especially nowadays. Maybe in like
The
early UFC days, or like an NFL.
Matthews, 2-week training camps. Matthews,
Yeah.
BJ Penn.
Like in NFL,
3-week
you
training
hear
camps.
the old timers like,
I
yeah,
love it,
we
BJ.
used to build houses like in the 50s, and then we would go play. But you can't do that anymore. Like NFL, like an athlete, that's all he does is eat, sleep, and train. And
Now, one thing that comes to mind with you, just because I do know Gray a little bit, and I always say that, so fighting is an art form, right? It's an expression of some of what's inside. So you watch a guy fight,
Right.
you get an idea of what that guy or girl's about. You get an idea of what's inside them, how much fight's inside them. So the outer, namely the fighting, is an expression of the inner. So if you see a guy like you were flying high, then you go through some turmoil. You're not getting the results in the cage. It seemed to me as an outsider, as a guy who knew you, that something inside you there was some turmoil, turmoil there.
Yeah.
Was there? I mean, is there a relationship between what was going on you inside
Yeah.
and maybe how you were fighting against that?
yeah, I mean, those were the last 2-3 years were some of the toughest years of my life. You know, and that's not even including the MMA part. Just like literally spending all our cash on a house and remodeling this house and all my time on this, and having no money to even pay for like camps, and had just being at that spot to where it's like, holy shit, this is real life. This is like, I got a kid to feed. Like, I could understand if, you know, you don't have a kid, but then you look at the kid and it's just like, you know, and then I couldn't really just drop the house because I had to get the house done in order, if I was trying to flip it, or if I was trying to move the kid in and my girl in, and so it was just like that conundrum of like, you know, I got all my money wrapped up here, or do I chase the other money and just go train and not worry about the house?
So it's hard to balance real life
Yeah,
and the demands of being an elite pro fighter.
Yeah, and you know, it's not like I was getting, you know, easy fights to where it's like, I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna go through this guy. It was all pretty much top guys, and again, all this stuff isn't like an excuse why I lost. I could have lost just because I'm not good, but you know, it's just hindsight. You try to like kind of look at what you went through and try to build off it, and you know, and then again, like, it all comes back to that coaching aspect. You know, you start getting the new coaches, and it's like, all right, we're gonna work on this new technique, and it's like, you know, you don't really change your style once you get to the top. You know, you add a little bit here and there, but for the most part, you just gotta keep doing what you were doing. You know, and just adding new gyms and new styles and new coaches. I mean, maybe you got too much just kind of thrown at you. I just had a lot on my plate, and you know, hopefully, you know, I do have another chance, and you know, I'm gonna take it because I want to ride this all the way to the end. Not just because of, you know, I gotta pay for stuff. I gotta do this.
It's not about money.
It's never about money. And people, like, I hear people talking like, oh, this guy, he wants more money or whatever. He's not even. No, you wanna do your dream until the end. You wanna ride it until the wheels literally fall off. You know, and
Now, Gray, so along those lines, when you know you've had a losing skid, which you hadn't had, a tough skid for you. You've had the stoppage losses. Do you still feel, you're 36? You're still a guy who's done a lot. If you look at the Gray Maynard resume in life, the guy has a history of succeeding at a high level. So that's in you. That's still in you. when you look at what there's left to do you still think there's still that dream? I could be UFC champion. I could still get it right. I could still. Is that still burn inside you? And you think?
I mean, again, it all goes back to like what I do in practice, and I would tell you my body was more messed up when I was competing for like a title than it is now. I actually feel great now. I'm going to drop down to 45, and I stopped getting on the weights and all the heavy
lifting
squats.
Weights, you're not doing the power.
Not power. It's just all like body weight, running, stretching, just kind of more taking care of my body. I'm doing a lot of technique. I'm taking off a little bit of time just because we just sold our house in California, so that's off my plate, and that was a big stress, and we got that done 2 weeks ago. So now it's just kind of getting my family organized again, getting coaching staff organized again. I was at Extreme Couture last camp, and I did the actual team camp, and ultimately the last 2 fights I was at Power with Pearson, and then I was at
That's a gym.
Yeah.
Power.
It's in Arizona, and then I was at Extreme Couture here, and ultimately when you're behind the 8 ball, you kind of you make choices based on being behind the 8 ball. So a lot of times, halfway through 2 camps, I probably would have said, hey, I'm going to take a little time off here or whatever, but I look to the coaches to like, what do I need to do? Like I probably have to train, I probably have to keep going, and ultimately I would get the flu in the last 2 camps to where this was like 2 weeks out, and I was in bed getting IVs.
And you attribute that to overtraining again, still? Or no?
And overtraining is a broad.
What would
just making bad choices based on like knowing, just questioning what I already knew, instead of just doing it, just like, hey, I'm not going to spar today, or I'm not going to do this, or I'm hurt. So I'm going to take a couple days off, or whatever, even if I had to lie, But I tried to keep up the 2 teams. I tried to keep up, and as you get older, you just have to got to start paying attention to your body, and that's pretty much it. And maybe I wasn't overtraining. Maybe I was just not taking the time off I needed. And it doesn't mean you overtrain. It's just you train great, but you're not pulling back enough. You're not taking the day off.
You checking your heart rate all the time. You do all that stuff.
Yeah.
You're always checking your heart rate.
Yeah, and again, when you're behind the 8 ball and you're losing, you start questioning what you feel. Like, am I just being a pussy here? Fucking suck it up. You got a kid to feed, and you got bills to pay, and you got, you need to, and then ultimately you go through like another portion of the camp, and then it's just like your body breaks down. That's what happened the last 2 camps.
Do you, in terms of I was going to talk about the Bulls here, but so there's a movie called The King's Speech. You may have heard of it in 2010, and I don't know if you're comfortable talking about this or not, but you had, when you were younger and even early in your career, you've had this stuttering thing.
Yes.
Where you've worked through that. You made it. Gray is phenomenal. You know where the trouble areas are.
Yeah.
You know how to work around that. Was there ever a time, like during the press conferences for Frankie Edgar fights and things like that, you're on the podium, all of this media is there, grilling you, asking all these questions, and is there ever a time where you're like, man, I feel like I might stutter here. I might stutter here. How do you? Is it ever hard for you when you're in the public like that?
Yeah. I mean, it's always hard because you're always kind of like going through it, just kind of in your head, and you don't want to show weakness to a point, I guess, and that's kind of how I always was, sports and just in general, like, don't show weakness, don't show, and you feel like it is kind of that, but it's really not. It's just everybody has to deal with stuff, and I've grown up, I had a little bit of the kind of stutter. And
was that really hard on you when you were young?
I mean, it really wasn't hard. It was just more annoying, more annoying. Nobody ever picked on me or like, it was just always, and I was the type of guy that like we would move from, a state to state to state, and you're meeting new people, and you got the stutter, and it's just kind of.
It helps to be a guy that can handle his business, I guess, and then be able to.
Yeah, I guess so. But I would move on my own, and I just tried to deal with it the best, I could, and.
Did you see the movie, by the way? Did you see it? You did.
Yeah.
What did you think? What did you think? I mean, I think it's Academy Award winner. Colin Firth won, I think, a Golden Globe for that. What did you think of the movie? I mean, what were you feeling during the movie? Did you empathize with the king? Did you? Yeah.
No, I kind of understand what he's gone through, of course, and like. Like even me, like he feels as if the king is going to, being a king, he's going to have all these responsibilities. Like that would even go through, I was like, man, if I do win the championship, I'm going to have like all these speaking stuff, and I'm really going to have to address this, and ultimately I want to address it just because of me, and I got a little bit more time now to kind of work with a couple people, and
So you have been able to work with like because you're really good.
Well, I really haven't.
Yeah.
At all. I mean, as a kid, I kind of did, and then just being in sports, it's always been my identity. I didn't really care about my speech. It's just my identity.
But then when you're getting closer to a UFC title, then it started to creep in your head. You're like, all right.
A little. No, I mean, it was always there. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was always there, and it was always kind of tough to deal with. But, and there's a lot of times where it's worse, And,
how do you navigate that? Because you're really good at navigating that. I guess, and I didn't see the movie, but in the movie, there's probably some words and phrases that give him particular trouble, I guess, right?
Yeah,
and
that's
so
kind of how it is.
There might be certain areas, certain syllables or whatever, or vowels or sounds that give you more trouble. And
I've had about 36 years of practice. So
you just figured a lot of that yourself.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start to go to a guy, and we're gonna kind of start therapy, and it's not even therapy. It's kind of more speech coaching, and it's just never been something that I want to put out there to like get publicity off of.
Yeah, I know you.
Like, oh, feel bad for him.
I know. I know you.
Yeah.
I know.
So, if people bring it up, I'll talk about it. It's all good. But
it just wasn't something you were not seeking attention.
Yeah. And ultimately,
me as a former journalist, asked these things, and I just known you, and I remember I used to say to you, even around the Frankie Edgar fights, like, man, if the press conference comes up, and just how do you navigate? How do you navigate around if they're asking all these questions?
Yeah.
And you're like you said, you're a prideful guy.
And then a lot of times, if you're switching up the words, and you kind of sound pretty dumb, at times, and I've heard that before, like, God, Gray Maynard, he's kind of punchy. I was actually in with Dana after my last one, and he's like, geez, you're stuttering, and you're getting punchy. I was like, I've done this my whole life. Like, I have a stutter.
Right.
He's like, I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But again, it's not like I want to bring it up to get, out there and, like, hey, everybody,
Yeah.
should look at me because I got this or whatever. I mean, I don't know, but just, you know, and ultimately I want to deal, you know, because of my, you know, my career's kind of getting closer to the end,
Yeah.
and it was at the beginning, and you know, it's just a couple, you know, I got to take a next step, and obviously, better person, you know, who you are, you always try to improve, and
But people
that's a
knowing
goal
about
of
that
mine.
stuttering background, it helps them see, like you said, it puts in context. Okay, he's great punchy. He's been stopped in
Yeah.
4 fights.
Yeah.
You're like, hey brother, I've spoken like this for years. I'm just fine. My brain works just fine.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and do you feel more comfortable writing though, or things like that? Where do you feel most comfortable? Do you feel most comfortable speak? Or do you feel
Yeah.
if you had to go right now and you had to speak before, whatever, a Hall of Fame or a big dinner, do you feel comfortable? Like, do you feel like, would you accept?
You know, I mean, I'm not really, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
You know, like I like to talk with people, just kind of like this.
Right.
I mean, even if the camera, you know, isn't there, it's just talking with people, and I can kind of get my ideas across a little bit more, and
You like smaller settings.
yeah, yeah.
No, you mentioned your.
And that's just in general. I like to hang out with people and talk to people. I mean, you know, I don't, you know, I do the autographs, and it's like, hey, how's it going? But each person, I would rather have a beer and just kind of talk with them. And,
Yeah.
you know, I like that.
Yeah. You
Personally.
mentioned Dana, my former boss. You had a conversation. Are you? I know that Dana's obviously fond of you. You know, they've put you in big title fights, and you were on the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
So you obviously have a good relationship and good standing with the UFC. But you've lost several fights. And so where are you now? Did they officially cut you, or are they saying, hey, Gray, go win a few fights? Call us when you win a few fights. Where are you now with everything?
No, ultimately, you know, Dana knows pretty much when I'm done there, you know, I'm gonna be done with
Yeah.
the sport. You know,
You just want to be like Forrest. You just want to be a Chuck. You want to be like a UFC guy. You're a UFC guy.
Yeah, I mean, I got started there. I really did. I had like an amateur bout and 2 small pro fights, and then I was on the TV show.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I was there my whole career, you know. But yeah, I had a talk with Lorenzo and Dana after my last loss, and you know, it was just kind of like, all right, man, we're gonna give you one more, and then but
And that was
Dana's
the drop to 45.
yeah, Dana's been asking me to drop down, and you know, the last year it's been kind of not questionable, but it's been an idea, you know, like I think I can make 145s, you know, just because, you know, I've kind of stopped putting on the bulk, and I've kind of stopped all that.
Not lifting as much. And all that
Yeah,
stuff.
and just you know, I don't eat 3 times a day or like every 3 hours. It's just whenever I eat. I got a kid now. I keep up, you know. I just eat a little bit here and there, and you know, I came out of golfing the other day at the end of the day, and I was 159. So yeah, it was the last year and a half. It's just been pretty easy to make 155, which kind of put the idea into my head, like, I think I can drop down. And Dana's been asking me, but I told him no for a long time, and then, you know, he kind of had me in a spot to where, you know, I have to do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I still feel I can compete at 55, but it's just, you know, I'm going to drop down.
If you get to write the script, you know, it would be a really incredible redemption song if you were to go down to 45 and make a run.
Mm-hmm.
You get to write the script at 145, new life at 145. How does it play out? I mean, you see yourself fighting for a title? How does it play out in your imagination, in your
Yeah.
in your head?
Yeah. Ultimately, it's just me controlling the camp and having good people, and
We're almost done, Gray.
yeah, just ultimately it's just controlling the training camp, having close people, in my corner.